The morning started with disappointment. I had spent 2 weeks planning a weekend road trip through the mountains, hoping it would be the first real chance for my girlfriend, Emily, and me to reconnect after months of busy schedules and endless misunderstandings. The car was packed, the route was planned, and I even stopped by her favorite bakery before picking her up. She stepped outside, looked at the car, then sighed. "I'm sorry, Jake," she said, barely meeting my eyes. "I just don't feel like going anymore." I blinked in disbelief. "You don't feel like it?" "I'd rather stay home with my friends. Maybe another time." Before I could respond, the front door opened again. Her mother, Linda, walked onto the porch carrying a travel mug and wearing a light hiking jacket. Unlike Emily, Linda always had a calm smile that made every conversation feel easier. She glanced between us, instantly understanding the situation. "So," she said with a playful grin, "if my daughter won't ride along, then take me instead." Emily laughed, thinking it was a joke. I forced a smile. "I'm not sure that's a good idea." "Why not?" Linda shrugged. "I haven't taken a road trip in years, and it would be a shame to waste all your planning." Emily waved us off without much thought. "Go ahead," she said. "You'll probably have more fun than I would." Neither of us realized how true those words would become. The first hour felt awkward. We talked about safe topics, the weather, classic rock playing on the radio, funny stories from Linda's college days. I had always seen her as simply my girlfriend's mother, but outside family dinners she was surprisingly adventurous, witty, and easy to talk to. She insisted we stop at every scenic overlook. "Life moves too fast," she said while taking pictures of a valley glowing beneath the morning sun. "People rush to the destination and forget to enjoy the drive." Her words stayed with me. Around noon, we found a tiny roadside diner hidden between pine trees. The owner greeted Linda like an old friend. "You've been here before?" I asked. "Once," she smiled. "With Emily's father, almost 30 years ago." Her smile faded for a moment. Over coffee, she quietly shared stories I had never heard. She spoke about dreams she had sacrificed while raising a family. About working double shifts after her husband passed away. About trying to give Emily every opportunity, even if it meant forgetting her own happiness. "I don't regret raising my daughter," she said softly. "I only regret forgetting who I was." For the first time, I didn't see Emily's mom. I saw a woman who had carried an incredible weight without asking for sympathy. Later that afternoon, we reached a quiet mountain lake. The water reflected the sky like polished glass. Linda removed her shoes and laughed as she walked barefoot along the shoreline. "You know," she said, "Emily wasn't always like this." "What do you mean?" "She used to appreciate simple moments. Somewhere along the way she started believing happiness had to be convenient." She looked toward the mountains. "You still notice little things. Don't lose that." Her words weren't criticism. They were advice. As the sun began to set, we sat on an old wooden dock watching orange light spread across the water. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. Finally, Linda broke the silence. "Jake." "Yeah?" "If someone constantly makes you feel like you're asking for too much just because you want to spend time together, maybe you're asking the wrong person." I stared at the lake. Deep down, I knew she was right. This trip had shown me something I had refused to admit for months. Relationships shouldn't feel one-sided. Love shouldn't require convincing someone to simply show up. When we drove back into town that evening, Emily barely looked up from her phone. "So," she asked casually, "how was the trip?" Linda smiled before I could answer. It reminded us that life is too short to waste opportunities. Emily nodded without really listening. A week later, she and I ended our relationship peacefully. There was no dramatic fight. Just the quiet realization that we wanted different futures. Months later, I still remembered that unexpected road trip. Not because I had fallen in love or because some impossible romance had begun. Instead, I remembered the lessons hidden between winding roads, mountain views, and honest conversations with someone who had already lived through life's hardest chapters. Sometimes, the person who changes your life isn't the one you planned to travel with. Sometimes, it's the one who simply smiles and says, "Then take me instead." Jake and Emily had been apart for nearly 3 months when autumn arrived. The breakup had been quiet, almost painfully mature. There were no angry messages, no dramatic accusations, just the slow acceptance that they had stopped walking toward the same future long before the relationship officially ended. Life moved on. Jake buried himself in work, picked up weekend hiking again, and found comfort in the peaceful routines he had forgotten while trying so hard to keep a fading relationship alive. One Saturday morning, his phone buzzed. It was Linda. "Would you mind helping me? My car won't start, and the mechanic can't come until Monday." Jake smiled. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. The old sedan refused to start because of a dead battery. Within half an hour Jake had replaced it and checked the rest of the engine. Linda handed him a glass of homemade lemonade. "I knew you'd figure it out." He laughed. "I just got lucky." "No," she replied warmly. "You always say that when you do something kind." As they sat on the porch, Linda looked healthier than she had during the road trip. She had joined a local photography club, started hiking every weekend, and even enrolled in an evening art class. "You inspired me," she admitted. Jake looked confused. "I inspired you?" She nodded. "That trip reminded me I still had a life waiting for me. For years I believed my story ended the moment I became someone else's mother." Jake smiled. "I'm glad you found yourself again." "So am I." A few weeks later, Linda invited him to a community charity event raising money for children's education. "I could use another volunteer," she said. Jake agreed. The event turned out to be far larger than either expected. Families filled the park. Local musicians played on a small stage. Children laughed while painting colorful murals. Jake spent most of the afternoon repairing broken bicycles that would later be donated to kids who couldn't afford them. Linda wandered through the crowd taking photographs. Every now and then she'd point her camera toward Jake. "Stop taking pictures while I'm covered in grease," he joked. She laughed. "Those are the best ones." An elderly volunteer watched them from nearby before quietly smiling. "You two make a wonderful family." Both of them immediately laughed. "Oh, no," Linda said quickly. "He's practically family already." Jake nodded. "She's like the mom who keeps reminding me to eat vegetables." The old man chuckled. "Well, families aren't always connected by blood." His words lingered longer than anyone expected. Later that evening they sat on folding chairs watching children release paper lanterns into the night sky. Linda broke the silence. "Emily called today." Jake glanced over. "How is she?" "She's moving across the country." He smiled gently. "I hope she's happy." "I think she will be." Linda looked at him carefully. "You know, not once have you spoken badly about her." "There wouldn't be any point. Most people would." Jake shrugged. "She wasn't a bad person. We just wanted different lives." Linda's eyes became slightly misty. "Thank you." "For what?" "For loving my daughter honestly, even when it didn't last." Jake didn't know how to answer. Sometimes gratitude was heavier than apologies. As winter approached, Jake received an unexpected package. Inside was a framed photograph. It showed him standing beside the mountain lake during that unforgettable road trip. He was staring toward the horizon, completely unaware the picture had been taken. On the back, Linda had written a short note. "The happiest people are rarely the ones chasing perfect plans. They're the ones who keep moving when life changes the route. Thank you for reminding me that new roads can lead to beautiful places. Jake placed the photograph on the bookshelf beside his desk. Whenever work became overwhelming or life felt uncertain, he found himself looking at that picture. It reminded him that disappointment had once felt like failure. But in reality, it had quietly opened the door to growth, forgiveness, and unexpected friendships. The road trip hadn't changed everything because it created a new romance. It changed everything because it taught two people from different generations that healing often begins the moment life refuses to go according to plan. And sometimes, the detour becomes the destination no one knew they truly needed. A full year passed before Jake returned to the same mountain road. This time, he wasn't chasing a relationship or trying to fix one. He simply wanted to revisit the place where his perspective on life had quietly changed. The lake looked exactly as he remembered. The water shimmered beneath the afternoon sun, the pine trees swayed in the cool breeze, and the old wooden dock still stretched into the calm water. As he stood there smiling, his phone rang. It was Linda. "I had a feeling you'd be there today," she said. Jake laughed. "How did you know?" "Because today marks exactly 1 year since that unexpected trip." "I can't believe you remembered." "I remember the important days." An hour later, Linda surprised him by pulling into the parking area with a brand new camera hanging around her neck. "I figured this place deserved another visit." Together they walked the familiar trail, laughing about everything that had happened over the past year. Linda's photography had grown into a successful small business. Her landscape photos had been featured in local galleries, and she finally believed it wasn't too late to follow her dreams. Jake had accepted a promotion at work, but more importantly, he had learned something even more valuable: never to force relationships that lacked mutual effort. As evening settled over the mountains, they reached the same wooden dock. Linda pulled out an old photograph. It was the picture from their first trip together. "Do you remember what I told you here?" she asked. Jake smiled. "You said that if someone makes you feel like spending time together is asking too much, you're asking the wrong person." She nodded. "And you listened." "I finally did." For a while they simply watched the sunset paint the lake in shades of gold and crimson. Then another familiar voice called from behind them. "Mom?" Both turned. Emily stood at the end of the dock. She had driven several hours after learning where they were. She looked different, more mature, calmer, less hurried than before. Jake smiled politely. "It's good to see you." "You too." There was an awkward silence before Emily took a deep breath. "I owe both of you an apology." Linda gently squeezed her daughter's hand. Emily looked at Jake. "When we dated, I expected everything to happen on my schedule. I didn't appreciate the effort you made, or the kind of person you were." Jake shook his head. "We were young." "No," Emily replied softly. "We were different." She smiled sadly. "I spent a long time blaming bad timing. Then I realized the problem wasn't timing. It was me refusing to value what I already had." Jake appreciated her honesty. "I hope you found what you're looking for." "I think I'm finally learning." The three of them sat together as the sun disappeared beyond the mountains. No bitterness remained. Only gratitude. Before leaving, Emily looked at her mother. "You've changed." Linda laughed. "So have you. And I'm proud of both of us." As they walked back toward the parking lot, Emily quietly turned to Jake. "You know, if I hadn't cancelled that road trip, none of this would have happened." Jake smiled. "Funny how life works." She laughed. "I used to think losing someone meant losing everything. And now? Now I know that sometimes losing one path helps everyone find the one they were actually meant to follow." They exchanged one final hug. No promises. No regrets. Just peace. Jake watched as Emily and Linda drove away together, talking and laughing like old friends rediscovering each other. He looked back toward the quiet lake one last time. The unexpected road trip had begun with rejection. It had continued with wisdom. And it ended with something far more valuable than romance, a reminder that kindness, forgiveness, and honest conversations can transform even life's greatest disappointments into its most meaningful memories. Some journeys begin with the people we choose. The ones that truly change us often begin with the people life chooses instead.